Hi Lynsey, how are you?
Good, Nicky, how are you?
I am very well. It's good to see you. It's been a while.
It has been a while. This pandemic is keeping us all apart.
Oh, I know, it's terrible, isn't it? So, Lynsey, just a little intro for you. Lynsey, you are the MD of Heaven Publicity. And today we're going to chat a little bit around kind of crisis management and what it means from a PR perspective. And Lynsey, you're going to share some advice about how to work with the media in such times. And
Absolutely.
yeah. So I think, sort of generally thinking about PR support and crisis management, I always sort of think about it as being some sort of large scale incident or crisis that's got injury or loss of life. But what are the other types of situations that you would be enlisted to help with a crisis?
Well, first of all, you see this lovely man behind me here.
Yeah.
As you know, all celebs have PRs because there's always a scandal around the corner. So there's all sorts. It could be, for example, the ash cloud we dealt with when there were people stuck all over the world because they couldn't get back. The current pandemic when people have been stuck and trying to get back. One of the ones I was brought in for was by a water company that they were supposed to be giving the water a marathon and the council had forgotten to order it, but they had given the name of the water company out. So everybody came down on them. Another one's been a fake site setting up as one of our clients and selling their holidays. So they've basically taken, they've copied the IP and then they're selling it and just taking the cash. Another one was naked students on tour on a university specialist sports tour, which not only caused offence to the locals, but also absolutely embarrassed the university. So I was brought in for that. Food poisoning in some hotels in the past. Haven't done that for a while, but that was quite often a thing. If there's been an issue with sexual harassment in a workplace or racial slurs, that can sometimes come into a PR crisis. And then other things like social media faking, where another person has taken over an account and is doing all sorts of things. So that's another crisis. And then something as simple, which isn't as simple as it sounds, but like somebody breaking into an office and a whole load of things getting taken, which are highly secure, like on the GDPR side. So there are all sorts of crises, not just injury.
Yeah, because I was thinking something like data breach, as you're saying. That's such a hot topic at the minute with lots of scams, and so that's something that could be across any industry as well, I suppose.
Yeah, any industries, and that's the thing. It could be absolutely anything, and especially, as I say, with sexual harassment or racial slurs of any description, that just doesn't. You can't have that, and it happens, still.
So, taking all of that on board, could you walk us through, how you would work with a client and, the sort of media inquiries that people would pick up on and the best approach?
Yeah, normally the media will have got a whiff of a story, normally by social media, as the public are really keen to, film anything, if they see anything, if it's out in the streets or whatever. And so the first thing, if it's something like that, the media, the first thing they want to do is they'll want to confirm the event, even if you don't know about it yet and you don't have all the facts, because that's one of the hardest things, is getting all the facts together. They'll want to know who's involved. You may not know who's involved at that stage. They want to know where it took place, because what they're going to want to do is to find out where the people involved are so they can go and start interviewing them. So, that's a key thing for them. If it's an injury, they want to know which hospital they're in. But the problem is, well, not the problem, but the real issue is you want to protect the injured. They don't want a whole load of media turning up and harassing them while they're in hospital. They'll want to know if they're UK citizens, if your client is UK based, because that is the story if it is anything to do with UK and you're UK based. They want to know what the incident was, how it happened in depth, and why did it happen, or if it did happen and it was something awful, why didn't you prevent it? So they're the sort of things they'd want to know. And the thing with that, though, is, of course, you may not always have all those answers. And that's why getting a PR in as soon as you can is really important, because you need to be able to get all the facts straight before somebody goes out there and talks about it, to be honest.
Yeah, and I mean, in terms of that, then from a communications perspective, what would you say are the three main things that a business or a leader should be thinking about?
Well, they've got to make sure they've got an incident management plan ready and to follow it. This puts PR at the heart of the management team to advise of comms, obviously with the media, but also how to communicate with current customers, families of customers affected, how the sales team respond, setting up separate lines for PR and sales, or crisis management and sales. You know, that is, the incident plan is absolutely paramount. It's so important. The second thing is that staff have to be advised straight away, as soon as anything happens, that nothing must be divulged, like the names or details of injured parties, to the media, because again, that's protection, GDPR, as well as respecting the people involved. And the third thing is there has to be a company spokesperson to be the one who is trained to speak on behalf of the business. It's normally someone in authority, but it mustn't be somebody who's bolshy or offhand, but it has to be a kind and compassionate person who can speak to the media, understand what they need, but also get the facts across. So, you know, those I would say are the three most important things to manage the situation.
Yeah, and I know from, you know, my own personal experience running a business, the incident management plan is really important. And I think, you know, the thing to have, it's not just a paper document, is it? It's something that you've got to dry run, you've got to test it, and you've got to make sure the whole team understand their roles.
Yes, and that's the other thing.
It really kicks off.
Yeah, and as you know, a lot of people just have that piece of paper. A lot of them don't do a test run, and that is actually the most important thing. And we work together with clients, and we do that because the pure reason is that some people will never have had media standing on their front doorstepping them, and that is a whole different experience when you've got a camera in your face at the front door of your business. You know, how do you access the business without being cornered by the media? It's also knowing how to deal when it's a radio interview, what things you can say, and it is it's in your face, and it's very, very high pressured. So yeah, you really need to do a run through so that when it does happen, you're aware of how to deal with everything.
Yeah. And what are the absolute don't do's?
Oh, absolute don't do's: lie, speculate, and I think that is so important because people speculate without actually knowing, and then you'll see that. A good example of that yesterday was with Harry and Meghan about the baby being Lilibet, and that they hadn't spoken to the Queen. You know, that whole story went round in circles, and the Buckingham Palace then stated no, the Queen wasn't contacted. But again, that's the thing, it's speculation, and that made the media speculation. The things you need to do, really important, are stick to the facts, stick to what you know, what you've been told, what you have in front of you, and make sure everyone in the company knows their roles. And that is part of this dry run through. And I think the other do is to keep lines of communications open with the media. You do have to write a holding statement the minute an incident of any description happens. And then it's up to you on the agenda of time of when the next lot of news gets released. And that is really important, keeping the media abreast of when you're going to release news.
Yeah, and also internal comms, I guess, as well, you know, making sure that the team are not put in the dark about it, because that's when that speculation starts to kick on. Exactly.
And that's why having the plan, and part of the plan is that you would have updates internally, and keeping everybody in the loop. And some people would have now these days using Teams, they would use that as a system, and it is just to keep everybody up to date.
Yeah, no, it is really important. And what advice would you have for a business owner or leader that doesn't have any of that in place at the moment?
It's more than ever, I think it's so important, because you need to be ready. You know, a name can be ruined so quickly if you don't respond properly. It can totally be wrecked overnight, and you don't want that. You've taken years to build your business up. So the most important thing is you need to have a crisis management plan. You need media training, because it's ultimately, if you think about it, at the end of the day, it's worth that small amount of investment to ensure your company at the end of the day comes out still running and has done a good job. And, you know, quite often you will see when a company has done a good example of PR, when there's been a crisis, they will be thanked for being so helpful, etc. And actually it helps in the future, because that media might come back to you for other things. So it's really important that you have a very professional outlook and you get media training and you do have a plan. Another example, I would say, to this day, one of my favorites is when Donald Trump announced that his lawyers would address reporters from the Four Seasons in Philadelphia. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
Because again, if they'd had a crisis management plan, you know, the news conference couldn't be held at the Four Seasons in Philadelphia because there isn't one. And in fact, it was at Four Seasons Total Landscaping. So, you know, again, if they'd had a management plan, which you would have thought United States of America would have had one, you know, because you had to respond to something, you know, that's what could happen. And so you'd look a fool as well. So the biggest thing is, if anybody does want any media training, or, you know, would like to have help writing their crisis management plan, Devon Publicity is here to help.
Brilliant. Well, that's really good advice. And so what are your contact details if people do want to get in touch with you, Lynsey?
The best thing to do is to send an email to info@heavenpublicity.co.uk, or to give us a bell, 07717 078862.
Brilliant. And your details are also on the Sussex Collaborative website.
Absolutely. So you can find everything out there.